Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Racha Kodash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is The Syrophenician Woman Was an Israelite. And this pretty much was inspired by a video the Elder Pastor did here at IUIC Detroit versus Elder Mike in his peanut gallery. And pretty much I wanted to just highlight the part with the Syrophenician woman because IUIC pulled the scripture out, and like Elder Pastor said in his video, pretty much they did good everywhere else, but they failed there because they're still teaching the fallacy that that woman was a heathen, and she was not a heathen. She was an Israelite foreigner that was scattered in that region of Syrophoenicia. Now Syrophoenicia is Syrian Phoenicia. Just bear with me 1 second. Let me see if I could find a Just bear with me 1 second. All right. See if this one's any better. Okay. Cool. Now, what you're looking at here is a map. This is, the land of Israel here. Down here, you have Samaria, Galilee, and you have here Syrophoenicia. You also have Sidon, Tyre, which were off the coasts, off this coast here. Let's see. Yeah, which is a little further north, like roughly around here or here somewhere. You had Tyre and Sidon. Just trying to see if I could pull up another quick map just to show you that. Why are these maps so damn small, man? Yeah. Well, you could look it up. Let's see, I'll just try one more. If this doesn't work, then we're moving on. We're moving on. All right, you can see right there. Tyre and Sidon, that's Asher there, Naphtali. Okay, so somewhere along that line, somewhere around there. So right around there, you have something called Syrophoenicia. Why is it called Syrophoenicia? Well, Syro is Syrian. The land of Syria is, up above there. And then you had Phoenicia, which the Phoenicians, they were Hamites. Those were Sidonians, which were the ones that were masters in ships, that King Solomon hired to come over to the side of the world to bring back exotic trees and exotic animals, fruits, and so on and so forth. All right, so that's where we're at. So St. Mark 7:24, and from thence he arose and went into the borders of Tyre and Sidon. So that's the region where the Lord was at, in this region here. It says the borders. So these are the borders. This is Galilee. These are the borders here. So he was somewhere in this area. And entered into an house and would have no man know it, but he could not be hid, right, because of his fame. For a certain woman whose daughter had an unclean spirit heard of him and came and fell at his feet. The woman was a Greek. This is clue number one. Greek. She was an Israelite foreigner. She was one of the Israelites that was scattered or diaspora among the Greeks during the Hellenization period of Antiochus Epiphanes. Then it goes on to say a Syrophoenician by nation. Now, why does it say a Syrophoenician by nation? Because she was living in that land. All right. She was an Israelite foreigner that was living in this land. So just like the Apostle Paul had Roman citizenship, she was a Syrophenician citizen. And she besought him that he would cast forth the devil out of her daughter, right? So when we go, first and foremost, we go to the book of Deuteronomy. They're going to go to the book of Deuteronomy, right? That stupid demon. Deuteronomy 28. This is a fundamental, foundational scripture. You got to go back to the foundation. Deuteronomy 28:64. And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people, from the one end of the earth even unto the other, and there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone. So the Lord said he will scatter us among all people from the one end of earth even unto the other. Now, in retrospect, when we go to the book of Nehemiah, the first chapter, and the 8th verse, it says, remember, I beseech you, the word that thou commandest thy servant Moses, saying, if you transgress, I will scatter you abroad among the nations. But if you return unto me, and keep my commandments, and do them, though they were of you cast out into the uttermost part of the heaven, yet will I gather them from thence, and will bring them unto the place that I have chosen to set my name there. So the Lord, on the same token of him scattering us, he would also gather us. Let's look real quick, the word gather. And this is why I said that the Lord will sift the house of Israel among all nations. The word gather is kwabatazah, to gather, assemble, collect. So the Lord is collecting, assembling his nation, but right now he's only collecting the elect. And back then, you had Israelite foreigners that were part of the elect that were coming to know the light back then. That was the mission of, first began with the Apostle Peter, then the Apostle Paul, right? So let's go from there. Let's see. So the Lord said he would gather us from the four corners of the earth, right? Now, when we go to the book of Isaiah, the 11th chapter and the 10th verse, it says, and in that day there shall be a root of Jesse. What is that root of Jesse? Well, eventually, through King David, and King Solomon on down the line, Yahushua would come out of that line, which shall stand for an ensign of the people. What people? The Israelites. To which shall the Gentiles seek. What Gentiles? The Israelite foreigners. And his rest shall be glorious, because his truth was the comforter, is the rest that is glorious. All right. Then it goes on to say, and it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand again, the second time, to what? Recover. Let's see what the word recover is. It might be the same as, well, it's quanah, which is not the other word, but quanah, to get, acquire, create, buy, possess, right? So the Lord is coming to bring back his people, of the Most High, originating, creating, redeeming his people. So we're going to get back into the possession of the Most High by his son Yahushua, which is that root, right? So when the Lord comes back the second time, he's going to recover the remnant, or the remainder, the ones that are left behind, the ones that were scattered, of his people. Who are his people? The Israelites. Must we go to Romans 11 chapter to prove who his people are, and many other scriptures? Which shall be left. Why shall they be left? Because they were scattered among all nations, as we read in the curses, right? The word left is the word sha'ar, to remain, be left over, be left behind, the remainders, right? Which shall be left. And it goes on to say, from Assyria, when we went into the Assyrian captivity, and from Egypt, when we went into the Egyptian captivity, and you still had Israelites all in those regions. When you go to the time when this was written, you had a group of Israelites, Jews, that were living in the land of Egypt. that were calling themselves Alexandrian Jews. Then you had to the north, you had Syrophenician Jews, which were Israelites. You had to the south of them, in the land of Cush, you had Israelites down there. So Jake was all over the place. Then it says, and from Pathros, which was, I believe that was southern Egypt. Pathros, which is southern Egypt, right, region of the south, a part of the Egyptian and home country of Pathrism people, probably located in Upper Salakia, is actually northern Egypt. All right, so you had Egypt, you had northern Egypt. All right, then from Cush, which is what? Who are the Cushites? The so-called Ethiopians. So among the Ethiopians, there are a lot of Israelites. Because the Lord said, are you not as the children of the Ethiopians unto me, O children of Israel? Meaning you look just like them. Right? It says, and what? And from Elam. Where's Elam? Elam are the so-called East Indians. All right? It doesn't mean eternity. It means young. Let's see. See, you had Levite by the name of one of David's, in the time of David, who was called Elam. Province east of Babylon and north of the lower Tigris. Right, that's around the area of Iran. Then you also had Carmania, so-called East, the Elamites, the so-called East Indians, all in that region. India. You could throw Pakistan in there. You have a lot of those Pakis and so-called Elamite people that are really Jakes. Have you seen some of them people move? All right, now, he said Cush, right, which are down in among the so-called Ethiopians, and from Elam and from Shinar. Shinar is a plain between the two great rivers, Euphrates and the Tigris. That region in there, that's the land of Shinar, Mesopotamia, so you could understand. And from what? Hamath. Now, where is Hamath? When we go to Hamath, the word there is Chamath. Chamath. It means fortress, right? It says the principal city of what? Upper Syria in the valley of the Orontes. So this woman, who was a Syrophenician by nation, she was living in that land, in that region, which is one of the regions where the Israelites were scattered, where the Lord would gather his people from. Let's go back. And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover his people, the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Hamath. This is one of the places, and from the islands of the sea. Where is Hamath? And the islands of the sea, that also goes into those, like Cyprus, and those Malta, Melita, all of those islands in the Mediterranean. You had Jakes that were all scattered through there. Sardinia, you had a big community of Israelite Roman soldiers that were placed in there. So a lot of those people in Sardinia are Jakes, that over the years have mingled in among whatever people was there. So you have a lot of Jakes all throughout those Mediterranean island peoples. So the word Hamath, which is one of the places, the principal city of Upper Syria in the valley of the Orontes. So this woman, who was a Syrophenician by nation, was an Israelite foreigner during the Greek captivity that lived in that region, one of the regions where the Lord was going to deliver her or deliver the Israelites from. Now you may say, well, then why? And she besought him that he would cast forth the devil out of her daughter. But Yahweh said unto her, let the children first be filled, for it is not meet to take the children's bread and to cast it unto the dogs. You might say, well, that's kind of harsh to tell an Israelite that they're a dog, right? Well, that doesn't mean that she's not an Israelite. First and foremost, let's go real quick to Revelation 22. At that time, when we read all throughout the epistles of the Apostle Paul, that at that time she was without Yahushai. She was without the law, statutes, and commandments. So she was considered a dog. You know, just like those other Israelites. Now shall Israel be among the nations as a vessel wherein is no pleasure. Revelation 22:14. Blessed are they that do his commandments, that they may have right to the tree of life, and may enter in through the gates into the city. For without are dogs and sorcerers and whoremongers. So the ones that do not keep the Lord's commandments are considered to be dogs. Let's go to the book of Isaiah 56. This is the Lord speaking to these wicked leaders among Israel. His watchmen are blind, they are all ignorant, they are all dumb dogs. Does that make them not Israelites? No, they're still Israelites. They just happen to be labeled dumb dogs. It says they cannot bark, sleeping, lying down, loving to slumber. Yea, they are greedy dogs, which can never have enough. And they are shepherds that cannot understand. They all look to their own way, everyone to his for his gain from his quarter. In other words, they are dumb dogs. They can't bark. You know, they can't lead. All they do is look for money. But the point is that they were called dogs. And one of the scriptures that I thought about, which Elder Apostle Tara quoted it while he was doing his lesson, was the book of Philippians chapter 3. We'll start at 1. The point is in 2. Finally, my brethren, rejoice in the Lord. To write the same things to you, to me indeed is not grievous, but for you is safe. Beware of dogs. Beware of evil workers. Beware of the concision. Who was he talking about? He was talking about those Jews, those Israelites, that knew that they were Israelites, but that were wicked, that were trying to make or put the Israelite foreigners under the yoke of the law. Let's see what we get when we go to the different translations. Let me see what the NLT says. Check it out. Watch out for those dogs, those people who do evil, those mutilators who say you must be circumcised to be saved. Who were those? These were the Jews in Jerusalem, the ones that knew that they were Israelites. So these people, these Israelites, were being called dogs by the Apostle Paul. Okay? So it's not a big deal if somebody calls you a dog, you know, and you being an Israelite. So that woman was not a heathen. Let's see the word concision, katatomai. Almost sounds like catatonic. To cut up, mutilation. All right? Which is, you know, you had the circumcision, the cutting of the flesh. So the point is that just because the Lord called her a dog doesn't mean that she was a heathen. And she answered and said unto him, Yes, Lord, yet the dogs under the table eat of the children's crumbs. Right, because the Israelite foreigners would eventually be brought into the fold. Because the Lord said it is not meet to take the children's bread, because Judah had to be saved first. It wasn't time for the Israelite foreigners to come into the fold. That didn't happen until the Lord set up Peter, after Yahushua went back to the Most High. And Peter was the first, which is the head disciple, which is the head of the church, was the first to go to the Israelite foreigners and to introduce the gospel to them. But it was not given to him to go and spread the gospel to all of the Israelite foreigners, because that job was left to the Apostle Paul, who would come later. But the beginning stages of it was with Peter. So this woman, who was an Israelite foreigner, she was trying to come into the fold then, but it wasn't time for them. But the Lord did heal her daughter. Why? Because she admitted that she was a dog. She repented, pretty much. All means. And he said unto her, For this saying, go thy way, the devil is gone out of thy daughter. And when she was come to her home, to her house, she found the devil gone out, and her daughter laid upon the bed. Right. And that's why he healed her. Now, going back to the woman being a Syrophenician, which is not a heathen. Matter of fact, let's go to the word Syrophenician. And the key there was what? Greek. You had the Israelite foreigners. Syrophenician, exalted upon the name of a mixed nation, half Phoenician and half Syrian. No, they were not mixed nations. Suros goes back to the word Syrian. And Phoenician goes back to Phoenicia. Why? Because the land mass there was called Syrophoenicia, which was off of the coast of Tyre and Sidon. Okay? This is the land of Israel right here. All right? And then you had Yahushua was in Galilee. I believe he was in Galilee at this time. It had to be because he said he was in the borders of Tyre and Sidon. So he was somewhere in this area. You know, and that's how he ran into the woman, the Israelite foreigner woman. All right, now, when we move forward, you had, there was something here. Oh, you had the before I read that other one, you had the Israelites that will come from all over to keep the 3 feasts of the Lord, the Passover, the Feast of First Fruits, and the Feast of Tabernacles, right? And here in Acts 2 and 5, this was around the time of the day of Pentecost, or this was the day of Pentecost. And there were dwelling at Jerusalem Jews, which these Jews, these Israelites here, they were left over from the Passover because they figured, they might as well just stay and keep this feast and then go back home and come back, in the 7th month. It says, and they were dwelling, or they could have went home after the Passover, the 7 days, and then came back maybe 30 days later, whatever the case may be. The scriptures don't really go into detail about it. And there were dwelling at Jerusalem Jews, devout men out of every nation under heaven. So the Jews were Israelites that were from every nation under heaven. And the reason why they were devout was because they were following the law, statutes, and commandments, unlike the Hellenized Jews, the Hellenized Israelites, should I say, the Israelite foreigners. Now, when we jump down to the 9th verse, I'll start at 8. And how hear we every man, matter of fact, let me start at 8. And they were all amazed and marveled, saying one to another, behold, are not all these which speak Galileans? Right. Are not all these men that are speaking, these 12, are they not Jews? Do they not speak the Hebrew? Right. And how hear we every man in our own tongue wherein we were born? Right. Because they were speaking the languages of their nation. And they probably spoke like a broken Hebrew. They knew a lot more Hebrew than the Israelite foreigners, but it was probably a little broken because of their first language that they learned, which was from their place. Then it goes on to say Parthians and Medes and Elamites. And these are some of the places where we read about in the book of Isaiah 11 chapter. And the dwellers in Mesopotamia, which that's Shinar, and Judea and Cappadocia, which is Asia Minor, in Pontus and Asia, same places, Phrygia and Pamphylia, up in Asia Minor, in Egypt, and the parts of Libya, which is what? Northern Africa, and about Cyrene. And Cyrene was also in Northern Africa. This is why you had Simon the Cyrenian, which helped Yahushua carry the cross. He was an Israelite that was born down in the land of Cyrene, because you had a big community of Israelites in Cyrene. You had a big community of Israelites in Libya, in those areas. You had a big community of Israelites in Egypt, down in Alexandria. Cyrene, supremacy of the bridle, a large and very flourishing city of Libya. See, Cyrenaica of Pentapolitana, about 11 miles from the sea. Among its inhabitants were a great number of what? Jews, whom Ptolemy I had brought there and invested with the right of citizens. See, so you had Israelites that were there, that were citizens of that, just like you had Israelites in Alexandria that were citizens of that. You could read about that in the book of Acts, the 6th chapter, the 1st verse down. And those people were the Hellenized, or the Hellenistas, which were Greek-speaking Jews. All right. It says about Cyrene and strangers of Rome. They were not Romans; they were strangers there, but they had the Roman citizenship. Strangers here, You have the word epidemeho, to be present among one's people in one's city or one's native land, to be a sojourner. And they were Israelites that were sojourners in the land of Rome. Just like when you go to the Old Testament, you had strangers that were Israelites that didn't live in that region, but they would come from another region where they were born, and when they came there, they didn't have the same rights as the people that were born there, but they were still Israelites. They were still given rights, but their rights were a little limited. And this is why when you go back to Acts the 6th chapter, the women, the widows that were Greek-speaking Jews didn't get the same help that the Hebrew or the native ones did, because there was a favoritism going on, because they looked at them, even though they knew that they were Jews, they still looked at them with a little funny, with a little disdain, okay? Because they were ashamed of them. Inside joke. All right, so now let's go to James 1:1. James, a servant of Yahweh and of the Lord Yahushai, to the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad, greeting. When we go to the word scattered abroad, before we go to 12 tribes, Phule, right, which goes into that word in Acts 10, scattered abroad, diaspora, or diaspora, a scattering, dispersion of Israelites dispersed among foreign nations. And guess what's going to happen? They're going to be gathered back together, because that is what the Lord said he would do. He will recover the remnant of his people that should be left in all these different places. And one of those places was where? Let's see. Can we get it back? Right. One of those places was in Isaiah 11:11 was where? From Hamath. Where is Hamath or Hamath? We go to Hamath or Hamath, and we have the principal city of Upper Syria in the valley of the Orontes. So you had this woman that was an Israelite that was scattered there. All right. She came to the Lord, but it wasn't time for the Israelite foreigners to be brought into the fold, because the Jews had to be fed first, or had the truth had to be opened up to them first, and then later to the Israelite foreigners. So with that, the Syrophenician woman was an Israelite. With that, I pray that you brothers and sisters have been edified. To the next time I say, Shalom.